When you play a video game, there's some things that you accept as just being a part of that game's world, but sometimes, what we think is game logic actually has a basis in the real world. There's been several times since coming to Japan that I've thought, oh, that's not just a thing in Animal Crossing, or that has real meaning, and I want to share some of the more subtle things that I've noticed. Also, I should note that while I'm saying that these exist in Japanese culture, it doesn't mean that these are all exclusive to Japan or that they all originate from Japan. In any case, here are some aspects of Animal Crossing games from Gamecube to New Horizons that really do exist in Japan. Let's start with what inspired this video, the Raffle Machine from Gamecube. While some people who watched my Jump Festa video believe that this kind of machine was used there because of the Gamecube game, this is actually just the way that raffles are normally done in Japan. If you've been to a bingo hall, you might have seen a similar machine. You turn the crank one time so that a single ball comes out, and, depending on its color, you either win or lose. One of the malls in my real-life town, Japan, actually has a raffle once a month where I turn in tickets I received from making purchases in order to spin the wheel, just like in the Gamecube version. Another example of cultural influence in Gamecube is the Signboard. It might sound strange that I'm singling out the Gamecube version since all of the games have had a signboard, but what's interesting is where it is placed. As a kid, I had thought that having it in the middle of the players' houses was just for the sake of convenience, but this placement comes from real life. In Japan, neighborhoods will have a signboard right next to houses where flyers can be put up for things like changes to how garbage will be handled, volunteer groups looking for help, or events going on. So, instead of having it be near or inside a public building like City Hall to cover a wide area, you can find these in front of a house for people living in that immediate area, like in Gamecube, and people can put up their flyers inside. Maybe I'll put up a flyer in my actual neighborhood to let people know I buried a pitfall in another acre. On New Year's Day each year, you receive a letter from your mom with 10,000 bells attached. But why is that? In Japan, children will receive packets of money from their parents and other relatives or adults that know them for what is called otoshidama. The amount of money generally depends on how old the child is. According to one article I found, younger children normally receive the equivalent of $10 to $30 from each person, while high schoolers will get 50 to 100, meaning that older teens will often get the equivalent to a few $100s each year. Since Christmas in Japan has moved away from being family-oriented and become more of a couple's holiday in recent years, and most children won't get more than one present from their parents for it, they look forward to otoshidama more for the monetary gain aspect. This is one example that's not exclusive to Japan, as some other East and Southeast Asian countries have similar traditions. For the next part, I asked WilbosWorld to come and talk a bit about the music in the games. Wilbo?
Have you ever been in one of the Nook stores right before it closes? If so, you've probably noticed that the music actually changes. In Japan, around 15 minutes before some stores like supermarkets or conventions close, an instrumental version of the Scottish song Auld Lang Syne will be played over the intercom system. In Japanese, it's called The Light of the Fireflies, and the lyrics describe a student pushing through his studies even though he needs to use light from the fireflies sometimes. It's also sung sometimes at graduation ceremonies, meaning that it's a sign in Japan that, hey, it's time to stop and get out. Stop carousing! KK Slider has a wide range of music in his arsenal, including Japanese-style songs. One example of this is KK Lament, which is actually called KK Enka in Japanese. Enka is a genre of music in Japan that is popular with the older crowd. Sung in the minor key without the notes re or so, the lyrics tend to focus on sentimental feelings and romanticize Japanese culture. Tom Nook actually states in New Horizons that this is his go-to karaoke song, which means he's one of the Oji-san that you always hear singing Enka at small karaoke bars. Thank you for having me, StarlitGlitch.
Thank you, Wilbo. I remember the first time I discovered the music changing in City Folk, I was so confused that I whipped out a camera and filmed it since I had no idea what was going on. Speaking of City Folk, in that game, Lyle left his job as an insurance salesman to work at the Happy Room Academy. When you enter the office, the first thing you are greeted with are moth orchids, or Phalaenopus aphrodite, on top of a reception desk. When he moves to Nook's homes in New Leaf, we can see the same flowers behind his desk. These are called kochoran in Japanese and are commonly gifted to businesses for celebratory occasions, the most common being their opening. If you see several of these near the entrance of a store in Japan, it's most likely that it's new. Although the small ones in game are under 3,000 bells, in real life, besides the size that you see on front desks, you often see much larger ones that cost over $100 US. For these reasons, they give off the impression to customers that the place is refined, and therefore will be strategically displayed. Moth orchids are in the same order as Jacob's ladders, or lilies of the valley, which are not actually lilies. This next one is a small detail, but I got excited when I found out about it. The specific style of bingo cards for the snowman in New Leaf are based on how they look in Japan. I had always used the style of bingo cards that you either cover up using plastic pieces or you stamp in order to show that you got the number. In Japan though, you open up the number on the card by pressing down on it, and the shape of the hole is curved on top and flat on the bottom. An even more minute point on the topic of snowmen, I've noticed that in Japan, people almost always build and draw snowmen with 2 snowballs, but my experience growing up in the US has been that a snowman is made up of 3 snowballs. You can sometimes see snowmen consisting of 2 snowballs in the West and vice versa in Japan, so you might think I'm making too much of this and that the game uses 2 just because that's easier to make, but I wonder if this is really a thing. So let me know in the comments what you think. Fun fact, snowman in Japanese literally translates to snow daruma. Turning to geography for a second, you may have read a notice in New Leaf that appears around early May that announces the start of the rainy season coming up. This season continues for a couple of months before it becomes a hot, dry summer. While the notice doesn't appear in other games, there's still an increased chance of rain during this time. This mirrors the rainy season in Japan, when it rains almost every day and typically runs from the end of May to mid-July. Hydrangeas have a strong association with this time, so you can bring your umbrella on a stroll and enjoy the flowers. Now for something from New Horizons. In this game, you can exchange Nook points for items with Nook Inc. logos on them. While there is a variety of merchandise for the company available through Nook points, the fan stands out to me because advertising on fans is a common marketing strategy in Japan. In big cities during summer, you're likely to be offered a fan advertising something while walking around the streets or at events. By using it, the company gets exposure while you're able to cool yourself down. This one, that I got at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics that totally happened, has a plastic stick and boning, but you can also find the paper variety with a hole on the bottom for your thumb. In the game, you can also see this blue tray near the register like in Nook's Cranny. This can be seen everywhere in Japan because this is where you put your money for shops and restaurants. Generally, the customer puts their money in the tray, and the cashier hands the customer back their change or credit card, although since the pandemic has started, they've been putting it back in the tray. You do see variations of this, but this blue style with the raised bottom is most common. You've probably noticed that Isabelle has a large drawstring bag called a Kinchakubukuro next to her in resident services. While we've never seen her open it up, we can be fairly certain what its contents are. It's common for Japanese people, including high school students, to keep their bento box on a hook like this next to their desk in this particular style of bag. These are often homemade and include food like rice, omelets, fried chicken, vegetables, and other food that will stay good without refrigeration until lunchtime. In May, there's a stamp rally in New Horizons. Although not exclusive to Japan, stamp culture is a big deal here, and a surprising number of tourist attractions and events will have stamp rallies, like in the game, where you collect stamps at different locations in order to receive a prize. Many of these are aimed at children, but some adults will collect stamps at places like train stations. If you're traveling in Japan, you might want to consider getting into stamps by picking up a goshuincho. These popular stamp books were originally used for pilgrimages, but nowadays even non-religious folk enjoy them as a record of their travels. You use it to receive unique red stamps and signatures at temples or shrines that you pay for. One reason why this topic interests me so much is that this isn't information that I could just find from Googling in Japanese, because these things are all the norm for Japanese people. You won't see any Japanese Animal Crossing resources explain that gyroids are actually haniwa, clay figures that were used in burials, because in Japanese, gyroids are simply called haniwa, as even elementary school students know what they are. But here, I get to think about my experiences in Japan as a foreigner and what has gotten me excited to learn is a real thing. At the time of this video coming out, we're still expecting more updates to come out for New Horizons, so we may end up with more examples of Japanese influence in the future. There are, of course, many other cases in the game that I didn't touch on in this video, like specific items, but I might have to save those for another time. In any case, I hope that you are able to see a bit about the influences behind the games we love so much. 2021 marks Animal Crossing's 20th anniversary in Japan. What do you want to see Nintendo do to celebrate? Considering how popular New Horizons is, I wonder if I'll be able to go to a themed cafe for in Tokyo if the situation gets better. Let me know what you think in the comments. Big shout out to WilbosWorld for being in the video and looking over the script. Make sure to check out his channel, he has a lot of great Animal Crossing content on it, and he might have something special coming up. Thank you to my family who also helped to proofread my writing and my Japanese friends who checked the accuracy. Feel free to follow me on social media like Twitter and Tumblr for updates or other random things that I find around. Now that I've bought an Elgato, I will be trying streaming on Twitch at some point. We'll have to see. Thank you all for the likes, comments, and subscriptions. I'll see you later!